Okay, thank you. Well, I'm honored to be here. It's a blessing to be amongst you and to see the response of you folks coming tonight. Even the little baby. Look at that. What an honor. I want tonight to be very casual. I'm even going to sit down just like the rest of you. I did that on Sunday night where I was, and I had to explain myself, and I said, you know why I want to sit down? Because you're sitting down. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit a little bit. I might move a little bit. And I hope that God blesses us tonight in a big way. I'm impressed with the young people that are here tonight. And the very first thing that came to my mind when I saw all these young people walking in was when Paul wrote to Timothy, he said, let no man despise your youth. In other words, don't let anything hinder you from doing what God wants you to do in your circle of influence. You can be a leader. And I'm going to tell you this. Some of your younger friends will probably do more what you say than what their parents say. It's just the way it is. Sometimes they like to hear it from outside. It seems to have more weight. So don't let anyone despise your youth in your circle, in your school, in your home, wherever. Because I got to tell you, we all can learn from each other. Tonight, we're going to talk a bit about how not to, and how to help people who have struggles. The whole idea that we have in coming together tonight is that you just have a little better idea of how to do it. Because you know what? The issues that we are often going to talk about while we're here in Mexico are sometimes difficult topics. And lots of people want to shy away from it. They want to avoid it. And mainly because they don't know how to deal with it. And I hope I can help you tonight to know how to deal with it. Because it's not difficult. In fact, it's very, very simple. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But before we do, I want to give you a little bit about my background. Some of you have heard it. Some of you know where I'm coming from. And some of you know my story. Some of you have heard my testimony. But I do want to, in case I may not get to go to your church, I may not get to meet you personally. And so I want to give you not a long session on my testimony, because what we want to do at the end of the presentation tonight, we want to open it up for questions. And I hope and I pray that you will be just loaded with questions. And that you won't be shy to ask anything that you think not just you need to know, but others need to know. That's what happens. When we have a question, lots of people have the same question. So I'm going to ask you to think about it when we're talking tonight, when we're presenting some of the issues that we want to deal with, and think of some questions that you might have at the end. And we would like to bring those questions up front. So let me tell you a little bit about Bob. I grew up in a Christian home. I had a real godly mom. But I had a real bad dad. I had 5 brothers and sisters. I was the youngest. And when it came time for me to be born, my mom didn't want to have another one of my dad's babies. And I knew why when I was born. Because my dad was a bad guy. She was ready to bring me into the world. And the doctors told her it would either be her or me. We wouldn't both live because she resisted it so much. She had to have a cesarean birth because she didn't want to bring me into the world. And I knew it. I knew I was an unwanted child from the day I was conceived. There was no leaping in my mother's womb, I'll tell you, like there was in Elizabeth. Four doctors told my mom that if she lived, I would die. If I lived, she would die. Well, we both lived. Doctors were wrong. My mom lived to be 93 years old, and I'm here today. And I'm blessed to be here. Even though in that childhood that I had, where I didn't have a dad to teach me healthy masculinity, things about God, all of the things that a dad should do. My mom tried. She took us to Sunday school. But it was a very, very difficult childhood for me. I knew I was unwanted. I felt unloved. And I felt extremely alone going through those early years. Even my siblings, my 3 sisters that were immediately above me, didn't have much time for me. When I was 13 years old, I went to bed as usual. And within a little while, my sister's boyfriend decided that he wanted to come to bed into my bedroom and he would stay overnight with me. And he sexually abused me. And I didn't know what to do. I knew I couldn't tell anybody. I didn't have anybody to help me figure it out. I was on my own. So I thought about it quite a bit. It was pretty heavy. And I thought about it, and I ended up putting it under the rug, as they say, because I didn't know what else to do. And I did that. And I managed to do that quite well for a good while. In fact, when I was 14 years old, I trusted Jesus as my personal Savior. And that was the biggest thing in my life. Now I had a father. Now I had a friend. Now I had somebody who I could talk to and who would talk to me. It was so special. I loved God so much in those early days of my walk with Him that I used to carry my Bible with me. Wow, almost dropped that. I used to carry my Bible with me to school. I was so happy to have a new and a great relationship with God. It was so special. Later on, I started to date girls, and I met the woman that I married. She was the most incredible woman in the world. And I even think so even to this day. She's remarried, and that's okay. And I've remarried too. You know who I'm married to? God. I want to serve my God to the day I die. I want to know him better every day. I want to be so full of him that it just overflows, that I can sing with joy in my heart all the time. But it wasn't always like that. We got married. We had a little boy. And I got such an amazing job. They even put me through university to get a degree in food economics. And then they gave me a real good position. I was young, so I was an assistant vice president of operations of a very large company, a food company in Canada. They knew I was a hard worker, and I was. At the age of 10, I had 2 jobs because I had to put clothes on my back. So I knew how to work, and I worked hard. I worked so hard at that new job. And in those days, it's a long time ago, in those days, at the beginning, all the stores were closed on Sunday. Oh yeah, you never had a grocery store open on Sunday. But when I got this new position, they were just starting to open on Sundays. So needless to say, I had to work 7 days a week. So when you work that hard, and when you commit yourself to that kind of job, something has to happen. And for me, what happened was I neglected God. And I neglected my wife. And one day on the way home from work, I picked up a hitchhiker. And he was gay. And he told me all about life in downtown Toronto. And I listened. And I thought, maybe I should try it. Maybe I should see if there's something different. Because you know what happens, eh? When you put God here, there's a whole lot of stuff out here. And that's what I did. So I went downtown for a couple of weekends, and I decided that I would go down again. And I did. Eventually I came home and I told my wife, I said, Audrey, I think I'm gay. And she said, let's work on it. She didn't get upset. She didn't yell and scream at me. She was so cool and calm. She was, like I said earlier, she was an incredible woman. And she wanted us to maybe see if we could get some help. And I said, no, we'll work it out. So for 1 year, I tried working it out. But I was still working real hard at my jobs, you see. So what was here and what was here were 2 different things. I couldn't bring God into my life and mingle like I was and not giving him his rightful place. So you might say I was a backslider. I knew I was saved, for sure. You're not saved and unsaved. You're not born again and then unborn. Just so you know. That's my strong belief. After 1 year, I decided that it wasn't working. And I went back downtown. And I did it more than once. And I told my wife after a few times, I came back and I said, I know I'm gay. And it might be a good thing if you take our little boy and go and be with your mom. Can you imagine? The neighbor where we lived after I left, and she was planning to get ready to go out west to be with her mom, told me that the cries and the anguish and the agony that my dear wife went through when I left was unbelievable. And here I am, thinking only about me and going out and sending her away. Can you imagine? That happens in a lot of homes, you know. I know a lot of stories like that where the husband is left. I went to Europe. I lived in Europe for almost a year. I traveled all over the gay ghetto areas, all over the United States. I didn't settle. And by the way, I got fired from my job. Because I was gay. When I was, my son phoned me. I don't want to stretch my story out too long. If you want to buy my book, you can do that. But I want to move a little quicker so we don't keep you too late tonight. But I want you to get the story because it is important. My son went to see his mom in Texas. She was at Wycliffe Bible Translators studying to be a linguistic doing some linguistic work. She's still doing it today, by the way. She's translated many books of the Bible for tribes and different places in Africa. She was even there, but she got malaria and she had to come back. That's the kind of woman she was and is. So my son phoned me from after attending her wedding when she remarried and asked if he could visit me. And I said yes. So he came to visit me. And when I got to the airport, I didn't know what he looked like and he didn't know what I looked like. I'd seen him once in 18 years. He came and visited me. We got in the car and I said to him, I said, Sean, do you know about me? And he said, yes. I didn't ask him any more questions till I got home because I thought I wouldn't be able to handle it. When we got back to my apartment on the balcony, we started to talk. And I said, and what do you think? And he said to me, Dad. I never heard that. Oh, I'd heard it, but not directed at me. How could he call me Dad? He's known me as a dad. But he did. He said, Dad, my love for you is unconditional. I just couldn't believe that he would say that. 20-year-old man, young man, telling his dad that he loved him unconditionally. And he said, and it's even better than that, Dad. God loves you unconditionally. And I, by God's power and grace and Holy Spirit, was so impacted. I was so heavily struck by that. How could God love me? I had been in the gay life up to here. Believe me. And God loved me unconditionally. I said, Sean, you need to go over where we're doing some renovations on a little house that I just bought. You need to go over and stay over there. I need to go here in the apartment to my room, and I need to spend some time with God. And he went. And I went in my room to be with God. And I can close my eyes right this moment, and I can just recall how powerful, how amazing that was. That he brought me back. I never did think it was me coming back. He was there giving himself, to receive me back. And you know what? I was ready. Because the world, in my world, had a lot of conditions. And here's love unconditionally. And I embraced it. And I wanted it. Did I want it? And you know what? From that day, that night, when God helped me to make a decision for him, to this day, I have had victory. I have had victory. You can clap if you like. And I know that lots of people say, well, that's hardly possible. It's not even possible. And you know what? They're right. It's not possible if you don't commit. And you don't want to realize that our God is a great God. And he's in the business of helping us. And I am a witness to his amazing helping. And it's so incredible, I can't believe it, because I work with hundreds of young people and older people who have struggles. And they fall and they come back. And they fall and then they come back. And sometimes I'm wondering, how is that possible? How could once you find out that you could be free, do you not want to be fully free? Why can't you experience God the way that he wants to show himself to us? Look at Paul on the road to Damascus. And look what he did. And look at David in the Old Testament. All the bad things that he did. And God called him a man after his own heart. Because he repented and he gave himself to know the great God who sent his Son and gave us his Holy Spirit to work in us so that we could do what we're supposed to do, have a relationship with him. And many of you, if not all of you, have that relationship. And I ask you, I actually beg you to build it and to make it more real today than it was yesterday, and more real tomorrow than it is today, because he's so worthy. He wants us all. He wants every little bit of us. And he wants to work in us. And he wants to work through us. And he wants us to help others that need help. But you know what? He can't use an empty vessel. I went around to the crowd last night, and I've done it a couple of times. I never did it in my life before, but it just dawned on me that it's so real. And I went to 2 or 3 people, and I went to a young guy like you, and I said, "Did you have breakfast?" And he said, yes. And I went to another person and I said, did you have lunch? And they said, yes. And I went to another person and asked them if they had supper. And they all said, yes. They fed the body. We all do that. Some of us maybe a bit too much. I maybe should put my coat on so I don't have to, whatever. It's your fault, Sarah. She feeds me so well here, you know. She brought me a big bucket of cookies and muffins, and yeah, she fed me, as does Gloria and Lena. It's a great place, this little school campus. I love it. I love everybody. I want to ask you a question. And I know you're here because this is a little bit of a leader meeting. Like, you might be a helper, whatever you are. But I want to ask you a real serious question. You fed your body 3 times today. I want to ask you, did you feed your soul? You don't have to answer. To me. Is your soul hungry? Is your soul starving? Do you have it on a appetizer diet? Or do you feed it meat and potatoes? Do you give God the time that he can show himself to you? I often ask the kids when I'm teaching in schools, and I love it. In Paraguay, I go into so many schools, to the high school. And I say to those kids, what's more important, you talking to God or God talking to you? And most of them say, me talking to God. In other words, praying. And I said to them, you're wrong. You're not right. God's got a lot more to say than you and me, right? And you know what? It's changing. It's life-changing. It's incredible. If you feed on me, you will never hunger. And if you drink of what I want to give you to drink, living water, you'll never thirst. And we need to embrace it. I just want to challenge you tonight to even do more in your Bible time. Take a green pencil, and everything that God tells you to do, underline it in green, especially you young guys. And everything God does for you, underline it in red or highlight or put a little stroke through it so you know God's there. And there's maybe not. There's a lot of green. There's a lot of green. If we want to help other people in their issues, we have to be filled with what God has for us. We have to know the do's and avoid the don'ts. We're going to look at some don'ts tonight. And we're going to look at some do's. And maybe when I come to your church, if I do, and if I have been there already, that's great. And if I come, we're going to talk a lot about different topics. There's so many topics that we could talk about. Temptation, obedience, partnership, so many. Sexual immorality. It's a big one. And tonight I'm just going to give you some pointers that work for me. And they're God-given pointers because there's no better example. When I spoke last night at a church, I spoke with the perfect example who dealt with somebody who had a sexual issue, and it was life-changing. And he took the right approach. Could you pass me my... Thank you. This is the approach. We'll extend a bit or expand a little bit on it when we go through these slides very quickly. But I just want to give it to you up front because it's so simple. Each one of these cups represents the technique for reaching people of any need, of any issue that they might have. Doesn't have to be sexual. It could be any issue that they might have. This is the approach that we need to take. And it's good for parents. It's good for pastors. It's good for leaders. It's good for everyone. For the older brother to the younger brother, for the older sister to the younger sister. It's good for everyone to take this approach and no other approach. No other approach. They're all the same. You don't compromise this one for this one for this one. You don't change the order because this is love, this is grace, and this is truth. And you don't change the order. And I'll tell you why you don't change the order, because it's scriptural. It's the way God does it. And let me explain. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, he says faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these, the very greatest of these, even if you speak with the tongues, and you know what it says there, love is the greatest. And it was what prompted God to send his son. So love is without a doubt the greatest tool that we have to help anybody at any time in any situation. So remember, love is the most important. And the second most important one is grace. Grace or kindness. The law came by Moses. And we know about the law. The law condemns us. It does a lot of things. It teaches us too. But God gives us grace. And it's a good thing. Because it's what we don't deserve. But he gives it. Grace upon grace. Abundant grace. Exceedingly giving us grace. We must do the same. We must give grace in every circumstance that we have in dealing with other people. Being gracious, being kind, not being those opposites when we covered the don'ts. And the last one is truth. Now, a lot of people like to put the truth out here. Oh, yeah. Nothing but the truth. You sometimes even say, so help me God, if you're in court. We want to emphasize the truth. Sometimes we want to push it down their throat because it's so important. Oh, yeah. Well, it's not any more important than love or grace. Look at Jesus at the woman at the well. How much did he talk to her? How much did he do before he told her to go and get her husbands? And that's the truth. He conveyed the truth to her about her sin. And how much did he do before he did that? He walked for 5 miles to get to her. Can you imagine? Did you ever do that? Did you ever have that much love in your heart for somebody to know Jesus? And he was so kind to her. He told her he was thirsty. And you know what? I don't think he ever got a drink. Doesn't say he did. But he offered her living water. He loved her so much. And she was a Samaritan, and she was a woman. You know all the barriers that are there, right? But it didn't matter. He loved her. He showed so much grace. He even sent his disciples away so he could be with her alone, a one-on-one. That's the way God works. Dealing with us as individuals. He loves us so much. And when the truth came to her, she was ready. She took it. He told her he was the Messiah that she was looking for. And she took it. But what if she didn't? What if the truth, what if you've got a son or a daughter and they say, I don't want to know what God thinks. I don't care what God thinks. You got a schoolmate. He doesn't even want to hear about God. You got a workmate. They don't really have any time for God. So what do? You want to give them the truth. That's great. So you should. You don't think Jesus wanted to give her the truth? We want to give the truth so much that we just put these guys behind us and bang home the truth and think we're doing good. We're not. Because the people out there who struggle or even don't struggle and don't know God and don't want to know God, we need to show them the love of Christ. We need to show them the love of God. And we need to show them kindness as much as we possibly can. How many people do you know that you showed kindness to and you earned the right to talk to them about the truth? Because you showed them love and kindness. How important is it? Those are the tools, my friend, for dealing with any situation. Doesn't matter what it is. Somebody comes to you and says, I got a struggle, or I've got an issue. You notice I didn't use the word problem. Life is not a problem. That's the mathematics department. Life is an opportunity to get victory, to get glory for God, to have an ability to do what we're going to talk about very quickly in a few minutes, about helping others. When we have a struggle, when we have an issue, it's so that we can get better. We can serve God better. Look what Paul said. Would you take that thorn in the flesh away from me? And he went to God 3 times and asked him to take it away. And God said, no. My grace is sufficient. The grace that God pours out to us is so important in all of the ways that we walk through life. We need to avail ourselves. We need to draw on his grace so that we have help when we need it to show grace to other people. Because he sure is gracious with us. Look at the day in which we live. How much sin is there in the world? And yet he is still in the glory waiting to come and receive us all to himself. How much grace is he pouring out on this world? How much love does he have for this world? And yet he did always those things in obedience that pleased the Father. Truth was what he knew, and he could say, I am the way, I am the truth. That's in the middle. Truth is important. And then you got life. I like that order. The way, the truth, we put those two together, and he gives us life. Life is what it's all about. Helping others to have a life for God. And knowing that he loves them so much and shows his grace and his kindness. The church that I went to a little while after I was restored to the Lord helped me big time in love and grace and truth. They taught me. They showed grace to me. The elders of the church put their arms around me when we had a meeting one time, and they showed their love to me. And that's why I'm here today, because of what God has done and what God has done through his people, because they responded in love and grace and truth. Now let's look at our little topic tonight. Don't forget, I asked you to make sure you had some questions, and keep those questions. We'll cover them. We're going to go quickly through this. There's quite a few slides. I'm just going to highlight a little bit, because you know what we're going to do? Whoops. We're going to use Job as an example. You know, my testimony is out of Job 36, 8 to 11. I like that. That's my favorite passage. I will probably speak on it someplace where I am. Anyway, Job tells us all kinds of, that book gives us all kinds of good lessons. So we're just going to slip through them. Here's the three friends, his supposedly three good friends. And they meant well. They did mean well. I have to say, they came and they wanted to help him. They really did want to help him. And they had good intentions, but intentions aren't enough. So let's look at Elias for a minute. It says here, he tells him it's because of his sin. You see that little statement at the very end? He tells him he's suffering for all that he did because he's a sinner. Yeah, he judged him. Told him, yeah, do not despise the discipline of the Almighty when you sin. Your sins are telling you, your mouth, what to say. Your words are based on clever deception and so on. Your own mouth condemns you, he said to Job. It's not I who's condemning you. Your own lips testify against you. He judged him. And he didn't get to first base in helping him. Let's see another thing that he did. That was Elias. Here's Bildad. This is the second guy. And he says, terrors surround you, the wicked and the trouble them at every step. Hunger depletes their strength, and calamity waits for them to stumble. And he uses his own experience, and he uses his own wisdom to try and help Job. Didn't work. Never works. Wisdom is good, but it's wisdom from God. And we're going to follow how that works. Here's Zophar. And he tells him he gets what he deserves. Imagine. These are the don'ts. We can learn from these guys. You don't go up to somebody and tell them that they're a sinner unless you tell them, I'm right beside you. I sit in the same chair as you do. Because we're all sinners. You don't tell somebody all the judgments upon them for what they're doing wrong. He tells them, and he gets what he deserves. Can you imagine? You are what you are, and you get what you deserve. Come on. The dues. And this is the one I like. Elihu. And you know what? Elihu was a young man. And he taught those old boys a few good lessons, including Job. He managed to get to Job. Let's just take a quick journey on how he did it. Well, before he talked about Job, he told his three friends, and he said, and don't tell me he is too wise for us. That Job's too wise for us. Only God can convince him. I like that. If Job had been arguing with me, I would not answer with your kind of logic. Smart young man. Smart young man. And then he starts, and I love it. There's so many beautiful steps here. He says, I speak with all sincerity. Now, if I were to come down to you, I guess I got to be good because I'm on camera and I don't know why, but anyway, I am. And if I came down to you and I said, I want to help you, you would have to respond and you'd have to put your hands in my hands. And then I could help you. I could help you stand. I could help you walk. I could do anything. I would show you that I'm really sincere about helping you. And so was Elihu when it came to Job. He wanted to help him. And that's where it's at. We need to want to help someone, and we need to show them that we're sincere about what we're doing. And he says, I'm speaking the truth. Job was a man of God. He knew truth. Look what else he says. Look, you and I both belong to God. See? Isn't that neat? We both are. You might be older and I'm young and whatever, but we both belong to God. You belong to God. I belong to God. I'm 80. You're probably about 16. We both belong to God. I too was formed of clay. Okay? We're both made of the same stuff. So you don't need to be afraid of me. I won't come down hard on you. I like that. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to put you down. I'm here to build you up and bring you back. Because you know what, Job? Your issue isn't your sores and your struggle. Your issue, like all of our issues, are with God. 95% of struggle in life is spiritual. There's a very little percentage of us that isn't spiritual, that we can't go to God with. Very little. And Elihu knew it. So you and I don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be afraid of me. I won't come down hard on you. I like it, Elihu. You taught me a big lesson there, buddy. You can tell this is my first time using PowerPoint. Thank you for all those that helped me. I speak with all... Oh, that didn't happen. What's going on up there, Willie? For God speaks again and again through people. Do not recognize, though people do not recognize it. He speaks in dreams. He speaks in visions of the night. When deep sleep falls on people as they lie in their beds, God is the answer. He's the one who helps us. He's the one who speaks to us. And Elihu wanted to send him to God. He whispers in their ear and terrifies them with warnings. He makes them turn from doing wrong. He keeps them from pride. He protects them from the grave, from crossing over the river to death. He wants us to have life, and he wants us to have it more abundantly. I don't like this clicker. But if any angel from heaven appears, a special messenger to intercede for a person, and declares that he is upright, he will be gracious and say, I like this. Think about this. I have found a ransom for his life. Do you know anybody who's found a ransom for our life? Do you know anyone who can help us and who was tempted in all points as we were tempted? Do you know anyone who shows us all the way to do what we need to do in our help for one another? The way that we should do it. When he prays to God, he will be accepted. and God will receive him with joy and restore him to good standing? That's the guy you need to go to, Job. That's the message that Elihu has given him. He's leading him to God. He's telling him it's God who will help him. And that's the truth. He will declare to his friends, I sinned and twisted the truth, but it was not worth it. God rescued me from the grave, and now my life is filled with light. Yes, God does all these things again and again for people. He rescues them from the grave so they may enjoy the light of life. Do you think that was music to Job's ears? Do you think he was hoping that someone would come and not constantly be passing judgment, but helping him, that he can be rescued? And then he says to Job, mark this well, Job, listen to me. For I have more to say, but if you have anything to say, go ahead, speak. For I am anxious to see you justified. I'm anxious to see you clear. I'm anxious that the help that you need, you'll get. And do you think it's right for you to claim, I am righteous before God? Look up into the sky and see the clouds high above you. But it is wrong to say God doesn't listen. To say the Almighty isn't concerned. Because he is. And Elihu wanted him to know it. Man. Whoops. I'm getting some help from up top. There. Let me go on and I will show you the truth. So he's ready for the truth. I have finished defending God. I have not finished defending God because it's God where we need to go. And I want to convince you that it's God because that's where it is. That's what we need. That's why we need to feed and know God so that we can help people like Elihu did. God is mighty, but he does not despise anyone. He is mighty in both power and understanding. Isn't that a beautiful verse? He's mighty in power and he's mighty in understanding. He knows everything that's going on with you, Job, and he knows everything that you need to have a better understanding, and that's God. If they're, remember I told you my testimony was this, chapter 36. This is my testimony. If they are bound in chains and caught up in a web of trouble, he shows them the reason. Isn't that great? I was so bound in chains for those years. And I was caught up in a lot of trouble. And he showed me the reason. He showed me the sins of my pride. And this is what Elihu's trying to show Job. And he gets their attention on the balcony that day. He got my attention. And he commanded that I turn from my evil. And I did. If they listen and obey God, if I was listening and I obeyed God, I will be blessed with prosperity throughout my life. And all my years would be pleasant. I can't tell you how blessed I am. Not just to be in a relationship with God, but to be here tonight and to share the secret of being free. The secret of knowing God and letting God work through you. Somebody said to me in that hall the other day, "What's your secret?" And I said, knowing God and serving God. You can't serve God if you don't know God. So here's a few little steps. How do we do it? So let me go take you through this very quickly. How do we do it? Obviously, we show love. And you have to be a good listener. You have to be a good listener if you're going to help somebody. Some people you talk to and you talk to them, and all the time you're talking to them, they're just waiting to respond. They're just waiting to say what they want to say. They just can't wait. You tell them a story, they want to tell you a story that's bigger and better than yours. It's just the way we are sometimes. It's just the way it is. But if we listen and we're a good listener, that's what it is. I want to tell you a little story. This pastor, he went to his wife. He was going to have a counseling session that afternoon. And he went to his wife and he said, "I'm going to be really hard on that guy because he deserves it." And she looked at him and she said, "But dear, you can't be hard on him." "Oh, yes, I can. And I'm going to be very hard on him." And she said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to listen hard." And she just went down. That's the secret. Be a good listener. You learn so much when you let people talk. Be a good listener. That's how we do it. Show hospitality. Now you got to know that the way to a man's heart is through his tummy. And that's not just true of men. That's true of everybody. We all love to eat. We all like sitting at a table. We all like to have that time with one another. And it's great to show hospitality. When the truth is way back here, and you get the opportunity to show love and kindness, you know how you do it? Invite that neighbor, invite that person, invite whatever his issue or her issue is, invite them to your home for hospitality. Get to know them. And you know what? Don't ever, and hear me well, don't ever bring up the issue unless they do. That's what you're talking about. You're not talking about this until they want to hear it. It might be 2 years down the road before you talk to them about whatever. Wait. Be patient. That's one of the next steps. But show kindness and show hospitality. Oh, brother. Oh, we got it. And you notice I capitalize this next one. Be an encourager. Encourage people to want good things. And you want to encourage them especially for these 3 things. You want to encourage them to know God. You want to encourage them to follow Jesus Christ because that's the only way to God. And you want to teach them, if you can, to serve and share God if they're a believer. You want to lead them. You want to help them. And remember, the order there is very important. To know God, to follow Jesus Christ, and then to serve and share God. You can't change the order. You can't serve God if you don't know God. You can't know God if you don't follow Jesus Christ. And you can't serve and share if you don't know. So make it a point to know God. Hey, pray for them. That's a big one. Pray for them. Ask God to reveal to them his truth. And ask God to make you ready to work with them when they are ready. And constantly remind yourself of the don'ts. That's really important. Because you don't want to make a mistake. Because you know what? And this is a fact. Sometimes you don't get a second opportunity. Sometimes you can only knock on the door once and they'll open it. And if you don't show them, you'll never get to share the truth of God's so great salvation. Remember the don'ts. Don't judge them. Don't condemn them. And you got the don'ts. And be ready and be ready when they are. Oh yeah, sorry, we should put a comma there. Be ready when they are. When they want to receive it, you be ready to tell them about God. To know what God says. That's so important. Because there's a time when they don't care. But there's a time when we have a hunger for God. And as a leader, you need to be ready to teach them and help them to deal with whatever their issues are. Please do not turn them away. Please don't say, I don't know how to help you. Because remember, like I said to you, 95% of their issue is spiritual. That's the same for all of us. And that 5% may seem bigger at times, but it isn't. Because to deal with that, you need to know God a little better. To deal with that, you need to be in your Bible a little more, and so on. So be ready when they are to know God, what God says. We're almost done. Oh, man. Willie. Oh, thank you, Willie. Be patient, because it sometimes takes a little bit of time. You got kids? You got to pray. That's why praying for those situations comes before, because we need to be patient. When we ask God to help us in our struggle, helping people who have struggles and so on, sometimes they're not in a hurry to be free. Maybe they don't want to know the truth yet. So we need to be patient. And for every little bit of progress, we need to be thankful. We need to be thankful for whatever there is that they're dealing with. If they have victory, you got to be right with them, and you got to be thankful to God that they had victory over that issue. That they used that issue as an opportunity to get better for God. And you use that opportunity to help them to get more in connection with God. That's what we are called to do as leaders. That's what we are called to do as parents. And we are called to work with those and not to push them away, no matter what the issue is. Can you imagine where I'd be today if somebody pushed me away? I wouldn't even want to think about it. But that church embraced me. I hope your church will embrace anyone and want to help them, even in their struggle. The church is not a hotel. It's a hospital. It's a place to come and have healing and to receive help and hope so that they can be happy. That's what it's all about. I just want to, that's it. That's it. And here's a verse. And this is the end. You can be sure. You can be very sure. This is God speaking. You can be very sure that whoever brings a sinner back from wandering will save that person from death and bring about forgiveness of many sins. How powerful is that? How good is that? Faith without works is dead. But when you put them together, they equal life. That's what we have to have. That's what we have to share. And may God help you in your leadership, in your work that you have for God, to put them together and give them out. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you for your time.